Good afternoon. We are starting our next session for collecting, researching, and writing while Black Conference called Illustrating History, the Journey of African American Children's Book Illustrators. This program delves into the creative minds and artistic talents that bring powerful stories to life, reflecting the rich tapestry of African American history and culture. Explore the intricate processes and inspirations behind their captivating artwork and learn how their depictions of African American experiences and history resonate with young readers. Discover how these illustrators contribute to a broader understanding and appreciation of African American heritage, fostering a sense of identity and pride in the next generation. I have the honor of introducing our moderator for today, Dr. Roberta Price Gardner. Dr. Price Gardner is an assistant professor of reading and literacy education at Kennesaw State University in the Department of Elementary and Early Childhood Education. Her research explores Black childhood literacies, African American children's literature, and the socio-cultural context and policy implications of race, place, gender, and social class. Her work has appeared in publications such as Urban Education, Children's Literature in Education, Journals of Children's Literature, Research in the Teaching of English, and Theory into Practice and Language Arts. Give a warm round of applause for Dr. Roberta Price Gardner.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Thumbs up. Okay, wonderful. I am thrilled to be speaking with two of the notable African American children's literature creators. R. Gregory Christie is an award-winning children's book illustrator and lecturer with a long track record of creating inspiring art. Mr. Christie has won numerous awards, and selected collaborations include projects with Regina King, Karen Parsons, Joe Sample, and the States of Bill Weathers and John Coltrane, in addition to his NAACP Image Award and numerous awards for Coretta Scott King. Give a warm round of applause to R. Gregory Christie. Yeah, and in addition to Mr. Christie, we have Miss Laura Freeman. Miss Freeman is a Coretta Scott King illustrator honoree. Her work on Hidden Figures, which has been turned into a motion picture, it was written by Margaret Lee Shelterly and was recognized with an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work for Children. She reached the New York Times bestsellers list and was listed as one of the 10 books all Georgians should read. I totally agree. You are churning those books out. Isn't she, Greg? Greg cracked up. Like, you are. And I think that is so needed, right? Right at a time like now. We've always needed these books. But I want to start by asking you both to talk about how you got started as children's literature illustrators, and then specifically discuss like the first historical children's book that you created for African American people.
Okay, I'll start. So initially, I wanted to be an illustrator, but I didn't think I could do children's books. I was kind of afraid of keeping a character consistent throughout, and I was really pursuing editorial illustration, and I was doing quite a bit of editorial illustration, but not enough to make a living. I was working at a regular full-time job. Now I'm kind of skipping ahead because I waited tables for 10 years. I had a really hard time kind of breaking into the field, but I ended up getting a job at Polo Ralph Lauren in the men's design art department. I worked there for another 10 years, and I got tired of drawing the same shirt with Polo Pony on it in a different color every day. So in the evenings, I would be shopping my portfolio around to different magazines and newspapers, and I used to take an ad out in one of the source books, a small little source book. I don't think it even exists anymore. It was called RSVP, and every year, and it was a book that illustrators would take ads out, and the ads would go, the book would go out to art directors and magazines and newspapers. And every year I would get 1 or 2 editorial jobs, just enough to pay for the ad, but not enough to quit my day job. And then one year I happened to have an image of a kid. And that year I started getting a lot of like children's, not children's books, but like not the trade books, but like educational books. And then I realized, well, I can kind of keep a character consistent. And so I started pursuing that because I was really having fun doing that. And I ended up finding an agent and being able to quit my day job finally.
Right.
And the first book that really kind of did it for me was, of course, Hidden Figures. And it was really funny because I had already moved here to Georgia from New York. And I was having a really hard time. It was '09, and it was after, the economy was really bad, and I was having a really hard time getting work. And had a family with a couple of kids, and we didn't go to the movies because it's really expensive to go to the movies. We'd see, we'd use Netflix, but to take, 4 people to the movies, you could drop, over $100, right? So we didn't go to the movies. But a friend of mine dragged me out. She said, you got to see this one movie that just came out. And I was like, well, if it's just me, I'm not taking the kids,
Yeah.
All right. And it was Hidden Figures. And I saw, that was the only movie I saw that year. And a few months later, I got a call to audition for HarperCollins was putting a children's book out based on the movie written by the same author that the original book was written by. And I auditioned. They gave me the manuscript, and I picked a spread. And I don't know how many other illustrators were up against me, but I won. And that really, after that, I started getting a lot more work.
You have a copy of that out in the Writers Lounge?
I do,
Yeah, my copy, we did a book swap with pre-service teachers, and one of the pre-service teachers picked that one. So that's why I didn't have it up here. But anyway, yeah, it is a winner. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Greg, can you talk about your...
So my journey is very unique and very unorthodox. I started out getting children's books because I first started out painting in nightclubs. When people were dancing, I would paint, and that was in New York for a company called Giant Step. And what their idea was that they would have live music and DJs, and to make it even more interesting, they'd have different artists. Usually it was graffiti artists, but I'd go there with my paintbrushes and be painting in that dark club. And it ended up basically, I ended up going all over the planet from that. First thing I got was an invitation to go to London, then Malaysia, Sydney, Australia, Amsterdam, Paris. Like I started to travel for people doing events and painting. And I say that to tell you that I was really a quiet, shy child. And I grew up in a town called Scotch Plains, New Jersey. And I just loved to draw. It was an outlet for me. But I never really didn't overthink things. I just really went towards a goal or a direction, but didn't try to figure out exactly how it's going to happen. So what was interesting is that when I got to New York, I decided, first I started saying, clubs are dark, can I show slides? Slides led to, can you actually have your artwork showing each week? And instead of just doing myself, I invited other artists. And I started to show them, and I said, I'll do it if you pay the artist. So I was really entrepreneurial from the start, and I was still in art school doing this. And the other aspect of it is that, and I don't know how many people out there are trying or aspiring to be authors or illustrators, you sometimes your own worst enemy. Your mind can stop you from trying things or going forward. And I told most of my friends, I told lots of people about this, like, this company's paying you, you get to keep the painting, and you just paint for, start at 10, finish at midnight if you want, but, you can paint till 4 in the morning when things close. And all my friends were saying, no, I'm not gonna do that, I don't wanna be a spectacle in a club, this and that. But once they saw me traveling, they were all begging me, can you but by then it was too late. So it's important to kind of like believe and try things. So the way it went about is, first it was dealing with people in nightclubs, then meeting DJs. DJs introducing me to events at night with musicians. And one night when a group was walking from their stage to the record, to their, whatever they call the backstage. The green room. I actually stopped one of them and showed them color copies of my work. Just one person in the band, he said, "You did this? Yeah, I want you to meet the manager." The manager saw the work, and then he said, "We actually have a job with, we have a contract with MCA, and when we get signed, you get signed." Because we were going to do a picture, but now we think we could do like an old, like something like Miles Davis covers or some kind of painting. And that's how I started to get my first record cover. And career-wise, I did George Benson, Joe Sample, John Coltrane. I even did, like Miles Davis, different albums. Some of them didn't get released, but I started doing record covers in magazines. And then that led to doing actually a children's book company, Lee and Low Books, looked at one of the covers I did, and for that record cover, and they asked me to do a children's book of poems based on the word black and what African American children felt about the word black. And these are children that lived in Minnesota, so it's really like, important for them to understand their culture, I imagine. So as they wrote the poems, they were little children. I did the illustrations for them, and that's how I got my first book. Right after the first historical book that I did was Richard Wright in the Library card with Lee and Low, because the first book, which was called The Palm of My Heart, won the Coretta Scott King honor. And I came out of nowhere. No one knew of me in the industry. That was not even on my radar. And then before you know it, I'm doing 2 books. And the Richard Wright was important because if everyone doesn't know, these people get forgotten, and they're so dignified. If you look back at them being interviewed, I feel proud. I look and say, like Duke Ellington, they're articulate, and they dress nicely, and they're representing like the highest intellect, and I love seeing that. And it's such a change from today. And there's times when I do usually 2 lectures. One's about my life, and the other is about how imagery affects young people. And the first image I show is actually a group of poor children in the Bronx, smiling, going out for an evening. And it's 1940, and they're in a jazz club, and women have gloves on, and everybody's smiling and happy. And then I show modern images, and it's such a contrast. And as adults, we can process it, but children can't necessarily. I think they need help learning that they are valuable, they're not ugly, they're not darker's not worse. They have to learn all this stuff because it's being thrown at them all the time. So when I'm doing books, historical books, I pick people that you could go back and look at and feel proud, feel proud of who they are and what they did.
That's so powerful, and it leads to the next question that I have. If you look at most of the work that both of you've done, there is a dignity that I think is present. So I'm so glad you brought that point up. But you also sort of touched on something else that I'd like for you both to talk about, and that's your process. So once, you have somebody like Bass Reeves, or you have the Hidden Figures, the women, like, what is your research process like? Can you talk about that once you signed all the paperwork, you have to get this work done, but there has to be, like you talked about seeing the pictures, there has to be like some process that you move through, and what is that like?
Well, for me, it's all about the research. So I read the manuscript. It's a biography about somebody. Of course, I'm looking for images of them, and mostly I'm looking online. And back in the day, I used to go to the library. The New York Public Library had a big picture file where you could take out images the same way you could borrow a book with a library card. But now they have just about all of those images online, so I can look at those online. I use Google. I used to have a picture file of my own where I had, like, you know, scraps of magazines that I kept in closets, and you'd open my closet and just like boxes of paper would just fly it out at you. Yeah. So I've gotten rid of that. So everything, I do just about most all of my research online now. And sometimes I can find, like I did a book about Aretha Franklin. It was really easy to find images of her from all different ages, you know, from all different angles. But sometimes there aren't images of people. With this book, Fancy Party Gowns, the Anne Cole Lowe story, it was, I mean, there were very, very few pictures of her. And you can tell, like, you know, there was like from like certain angles, you know, there was like a profile and a front view, and I had to kind of extrapolate like what she's gonna look like from different angles, because I paint fairly realistically, so it has to really be convincing that that's the same person. For this book, I used my sister actually for reference, because she has really high cheekbones, and Colt Lowe had I noticed from her images that she did, and I didn't make it look like my sister. I just, you know, I kind of, you know, used my sister's face as inspiration, but I was really able to use Anne Cole Lowe's features. The same thing with the Hidden Figures books, you know, so there I found a lot of images of the women, but only at certain ages. And so you can extrapolate like what the people are gonna look like a little younger. You know, there were some images of them older. But in addition to just looking at finding out what the people in the biography looked like, there's also a lot more that goes into it. So the biography is, what year did it take place? So now I have to look for what the clothing looked like in that year, what cars looked like. I don't want to, if the story takes place in 1945, I can't put a model car that wasn't developed until 1946, right? So I'm safe doing something from earlier. So I'm just doing a lot of research about, you know, what things looked like back then, the time history, the time that it was in history, what the clothing was like, and also reading as much as I can about the people in addition to what is the author put in the story, so that I can maybe add a little bit more to it. So yeah, there's a lot. Before I pick up a pencil, before I start, I'm collecting images and doing a lot of research before starting.
Yeah, I noticed that with the sewing machine in there, it was very accurate in terms of that time period.
Oh, there's a story about that. So I did the sketch for that, and the art director came back, it was a man, and he came back and said, well, this page, he wanted to flop it the other way, because he said it flows better flopped. And it came back to me, and I was like, well, no, you can't do that. They don't make sewing machines like that, and at least I've never seen a sewing machine like that, so you have to turn it around, you know. So like usually, you know, the art directors or the publishing houses are really good about catching things, but this time I was the one that caught it.
That's great.
But having worked at Polo also and around designers, and so I knew, you know, I had a lot of experience in fashion, so that was a really fun book to work on because of that. Like I didn't have to research the end, like not the end papers, like the beginning part where like what the little, you know, croquis looked like, because I had experience with that, so that was
full
fun.
Circle.
Yeah.
I love the end papers of that book too.
Oh, thank you.
It adds an added touch.
So when you do children's books, you have to keep in mind you're doing artwork for people who are not even here yet, and the people who are here, the young people who actually start to look at books, you're teaching them morality and history and problem solving and even self-love in some instances. So the thing that's important is to keep that as almost like a foundation in your mind when you actually create the imagery. What also is in my mind is that I'm doing artwork that is going to be loved but mostly by librarians, you know, and teachers. So the thing is that they are meticulous. They put books in shelves and everything goes in its place, and they also are full of knowledge, and libraries are full of knowledge. So it would be as if we were going maybe like 60 years from now and people were illustrating maybe something from the 80s. And if you put cell phones in people's hands, people who know would say nobody had cell phones in the 80s unless you were really like a Wall Street person. And even that little small iPhone, that they were big. So that's the thing. If I was not around in the 20s, I don't know how cotton was planted, but I'll go ask someone who from, way down in Georgia. I've been in an opening and I met a person one time and he said, yeah, he said, you want to come pick cotton? We do it. And I'll show you everything firsthand. But the thing is that they know what it feels like, what the plant looks like. And you have to kind of touch into that element of humanity, and you have to actually get that right, that someone from Alaska knows that it's not all snow, and someone from here in Georgia would say, oh, well, that building's not in that area of town. So you do that type of research. For me, the first thing is this, like if we talk about this book, Bad News for Outlaws, about the first U.S. Marshal of color in the United States, Bass Reeves. When I first got the project, the very first thing that I saw starting this book was the image that they put in the back of the book, which is an actual photograph, really, of this guy. This is someone who was born a slave, was over 6 feet. I think he was about 6'3", and most people in that time period about 5'7". So he towered over people. He was very domineering person, but he was God-fearing as well. Now here's another thing that's interesting about this book. This was supposed to be the cover. This, him with a gun looking over, and I fought and told them no. I'll do 2 covers. And, I know you want this, and this is what you have as something that you had in your mind. But I'm thinking that if that's the other thing about your process, you bring also your understanding of culture that publishers don't understand. And if I were to put this gun, even though it's historical on the cover, I think most people, parents, teachers, librarians would be, oh, it's a good book, but I don't want to promote gun violence. That's what they're going to see. They're not going to see it through the lens of a historian that's going to say, oh, that's a 1832 Winchester. So
Who's a publisher?
Lerner Publishing. So they really, once they saw this, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, let's go with that. Yeah, definitely. Because this is the same emotion I got looking at, and I was talking about the same, like right now I've been revisiting that Ken Burns jazz, the jazz series. Yeah. And it's just when you see these people giving interviews and on stage with the suits and just this dignity. And again, when I saw this image of Bass Reeves, I felt like a swell of dignity. Like, look at this man in his suit, his mustache. He's really like, amazing. You'd want to see him in real life. And that's what I wanted to capture. But okay, so if I'm going to paint a cowboy, I will watch movies. I will watch documentaries. I will ask people from the region, like, what's Oklahoma like? Do you know about Bass Reeves? And so if you look at a movie called, it's with Kurt Russell, I think it's called, I don't remember what it was, but he was playing a U.S. Marshal. They took Bass Reeves' mustache style, but it's Kurt Russell. You know that old movie?
Didn't they just do a Bass Reeves though?
They did. He's become like this amazing. But I've even seen them do interviews, and my book is not face out, but I see it in the background. I know the spine is in the background.
They miss out on that great cover.
I know they do. Well, I think they're worried about me. Like, some people sue people for putting even though it's a book, but still. But that's the thing. It's like you're dealing with the idea that you're doing research just for yourself, of course, but the audiences are librarians who will call you out if something's off because they review books. Parents who don't want certain imagery or, derisive, things. And so it really that's all in your head when you're doing your research to get it right. And then you also learn because, for instance, when I watch cowboy movies, you think of the hats that curl up. The first, major hat was a hat. This guy Stetson made these hats that were round like what you imagine like a preacher. And when I go into a school, I say, why do you think the hat is flat and goes down over the neck? The sun. What if it rains? It's beaver typically, and it just goes right off and folds. So it's almost like wearing an umbrella. Guns were turned in with butts out. And when you do the movies and they take it and spin, that's Hollywood. But most people had guns butts out so they could do a cross draw. And the other thing is most people use rifles. They didn't go around pulling guns and dueling at noon and all. That's the thing. It's like you do the research and, these are more specifics. But in general, one book, I've done more than close to 70 books. And one book I regret that I just plowed into not doing enough research, and that is a book about the Haitian Revolution. It's called Open the Door to Liberty. And what I regret is that Toussaint Louverture was actually a person of the people. He wore the same clothing as the people who worked the land. And for the cover of the book, I put him in almost like a French uniform, because that's what most of the etchings are, of him in like a uniform, like a general. And I think I missed the boat for the cover. Even though I have him dignified, he really was a man of the people. It'd be like putting Dr. King in T-shirt and jeans. He might have worn that at some point, but most people know him as being, a reverend in a suit and tie and in line with what was going on in the 60s. So since then, when I do a project that's historical, I speak to because we generally, and Laura might back it up as well, we don't talk directly to the authors. It kind of slows the process, I think. So what I do now is that if I'm doing a historical book, I will actually ask questions to the editor, and the editor will turn it over to the author, and then they'll get back to me. And I can tell you that one book in particular, it got delayed. They had to go and find a professor in South Carolina to give me the answers I was asking. Because when I do a project, I really try to get into the life of the person. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing Sister Rosetta Tharpe, what kind of nail polish did she like to wear? Like what color? Did she wear nail polish? Did she wear gloves? Was she more feminine in dresses and heels of that time? Like the project that got delayed was called Philip Reed and Saves the Statue of Freedom. And my mind was, okay, we're talking about the Carolinas. This is someone in South Carolina. I'm sorry, it was North Carolina. And I said, okay, if he was a skilled slave, did he have an overseer? Did he have new tools or did he have borrowed tools? When they lent him out, did he walk alone? How did they make statues? If with the kiln, it's not a kiln, but the foundry, they just like heat it up and they pour in molten metal, and and they really sent me diagrams. They answered the questions, and then I proceeded on the book. Because if I would have shown him, in brand new clothing, and someone from the Carolinas looked at them and they never wore that, or why is he smiling, or this and that. So you think about these things.
Yeah.
It's funny, but also the kids. Like a lot of kids are really knowledgeable. So I did a couple of books like that were like sports based. Like there's one out there, Swinging into History, about the first African American woman in the
yes.
Negro Leagues,
Yes.
right? Toni Stone, and then another one, Follow Chester, and like a couple of sports books. And I'm not a sports person. I don't really know. I mean, I have to really do my research because I know like little kids are going to be. They're going to look at this and it's like, there's not the right number of, the field doesn't look quite right. There's not the right number of yard lines, or is that what it looks like to pitch a grounder, or what, like things like that. You have to like really research because, I mean, I have to respect the kids that are really more knowledgeable than I am, right? So.
that authenticity. As you were talking, it made me think about some of the figures that you have illustrated that are presently alive, like Kamala Harris. You have a biography on Kamala Harris, Ketanji Brown, Stacey Abrams. Like, how does illustrating a living historical figure, because we know they've already made history, how does that influence your process?
Well, I mean, in some senses, it's easier because they're more current, and it's not as much finding out about the historical, the timeline. But at the same time, I still want to be authentic, and read as much about them as I can find, and watch millions of YouTube videos and of them speaking.
SNL
and,
does
yeah.
really good job of capturing the clothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of thing. So,
Sure.
but lots of times when it's somebody who's current, there's a lot more. There are a lot more images of them available to find. So it's not as difficult as finding them at all different angles, and even finding images of them as children.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I'm still kind of caught up. I'm still kind of caught up in Kamala. I'm caught up in Kamala. I'm caught up in Stacey. I'm caught up in, and so I just must say I'm so grateful and thankful. Like, we have these resources for our children, right? So that really speaks to why illustrating children's books and illustrating these figures is very important. But
Before they get banned.
thank you, before they get banned, because they're banning our books, and not just because they have guns on the covers or the back ends. But you did talk about a challenge, so I do want to ask you both to sort of talk about a challenging aspect of doing this work. What challenges have you encountered as illustrators of African American history for children?
I can say that the industry is changing, and as I was saying previously, I used to do record covers, and I saw when I had too many people come up to me and say, "Oh, I don't want the album, I just want the song," I realized that the industry of music, the machine of it, had to catch up with technology, and had to figure out and reconfigure. And I'm getting the same feeling towards publishing. There's companies that are in, right now, one of the heavy hitters, Astra Publishing.
Yeah.
They have budgets but they're out of China. And yeah, they
I'm
are.
working with them. I didn't know that.
Yeah, everyone is.
Yeah.
The budget that they have, they can actually go and get the.
Oh, you mean the printing?
No. Thinking Dumb is the main company, and then Astra is a division of it. And Astra is it's a Chinese company. Even though they've hired everyone, they hired the best of the best, and they will give you what you want. But here's the thing, it's slowly behind the scenes, since the news is not reporting on things that are important, you're going to look up and realize, oh, how come there's no books about people of color on this title, these lists that are going out this year? It's a friend of mine that was in, and I'm not trying to steer it, it is steering a little bit political when I say this, but she said that she grew up in communism. She said and maybe people have heard of the idea of a frog doesn't know that the water's hot. If it's boiled, well, it's still cold. You just wake up one day and realize everything's changed. And so what's in my mind and the challenges I have is that you are really taking the time to do these projects, and it can be, the society's changed so much, so you're trying to adapt to it. For instance, when I fly now, I do not see people reading. And I remember, maybe it's in the past 20 or 30 years, everyone had a magazine. There were magazines in the plane. It was just it was valued. And our society is getting very, it's not making sense to me, because when you have schools closing and libraries closing and people saying that, let's get rid of the Department of Education rather than fix it or change it, you're really getting to the point where, you're going to look around and realize there's only one person telling you what to think. And at least now with a library, you can go and no one has a right to know what you're reading or what you check out. But the technology allows for it. Like anyone can pretend, that they're not looking, but they can just go and, hack into a system and find out what you're reading. But the point is that these things are in my mind that, I really do care about picking subject matters that are going to make people love themselves and think like, wow, I never knew that. How come we weren't taught that in school, and get inspired to learn more? And so the challenge I have is that, these books get banned, but here's a solution. Just go back to what people used to do. If you got to sell it out the trunk of your car, go do it. Like you can't rely on society to catch up, and you can't rely on institutions, and you have to actually be entrepreneurial in these times, no matter what it is. I would recommend anybody I'm mentoring or any intern to figure out a way to sell their own work, because corporations, as an artist, you are specialized. You're someone that's specialized in a craftsmanship in some kind of field, and you have the ability to make income off of what you do. And everyone has a gift. Everyone has some kind of gift. It may not be painting, it may be organizing things. Whatever it is, someone will pay you for it. If you package it and present it, you will get paid for it.
Wow. It is sad that African American, Black people, the Black presence in publishing is minuscule, right?
But there are and this is the thing, it needs I think it's too early. I was up late.
Yeah. It's okay.
But
it is a challenge.
The couple that do Black books.
Yeah.
Cheryl Hudson?
Cheryl Hudson.
The Hudsons, yeah.
It's like these are the heroes and people that we all should know. We should all know Tom Feelings. Just make sure that you don't let these things go off into obscurity.
Yeah.
And case in point, when I talk about jockeys, people think oh, that's high class and it's mostly people from South. It was actually Black people in the beginning, and they were so good they banned them out of it. And now, 100 years later, you're looking at me like I'm crazy when I say Black men were the top jockeys. They were the ones that knew how to work horses. But things can shift.
It's like the Cowboys.
Cowboys too. Things shift, and then you'll be arguing with people. Yeah, there was Black rappers. Black people invented rapping. No,
that's happening.
No, Koreans.
Right?
That's
right. And breakdancing. We weren't even present in the Olympics this year.
This is what I'm saying. And if you don't hold your culture for what is dignified and important, then all the bad stuff they'll give to you. Like, oh yeah, look at all these trashy people and ignorance. That's you. But all the dignified stuff is hidden. It's hidden. And you can't, that's what the library is for. And that's why, wear that on a T-shirt. Wear these people that say, who's that? And then you don't know this person.
Sure. Yes, no, somebody just had a great T-shirt. She left. Read a, what book.
Yeah. Okay.
An expletive. Yeah. But that's always been true, right? You know what I mean? That's always been true, but I hear what you're saying, and it is very emotional, right now. And the fact that we have this space and you all are here, absolutely, that speaks to it too. We have to, though, fill all these other seats, right, so that people know. But Ms. Freeman, can you talk a little bit about any challenges that you've encountered?
I just wanted to say it feels like we're going back in time. Yeah. Going backwards instead of forwards. For a little while there, felt like we were going forwards. And because when I grew up, I wasn't taught about any of the any of the people that from the books I illustrate. And I feel that I'm learning just as much as the children. Because I've gotten projects where I was offered the manuscript, and I had never heard of the person,
Yeah.
and I had to go look them up, and it was like, oh my God, how could I not know who Ida B. Wells is? You know, I was never
Right.
taught that in school.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing, you know, and I feel like we're getting to a point where that's going to start happening again, you know.
Yeah, and banning our books, so then that increases the likelihood that children will encounter these particular stories.
Right, right. They'll just kind of disappear, you know. It's,
But I
it's
would-
scary.
I did want to say, like, that's the whole, my whole mindset is just like I was telling you, like, how I painted in nightclubs and people thought it was crazy. I sell my books. I go to Florida almost every month and I sell books. And it's a 5-hour drive. And I don't feel like it sometimes, but it was so successful. They keep calling. I don't get to stay here in Georgia. They keep calling me to come back down. And
Where is this in Florida?
I go to Destin, mainly that
Oh, yeah.
tourist area, but there are bases on there's military base down there, and I sell books on the base, and then you go a little further, there's Sarasota and all these other little boutique places. But the answer is, like, again, grassroots. Like, they can ban institutions, but
Yeah.
fortunately right now they're not banning it from your house. So you appeal to someone who is walking, because no one wakes up in the morning saying, I got to get a Sojourner Truth book today. They see it and say, oh, wow, I didn't know she did that. She took her former enslaver to court and won in the 1800s before the Civil War started. And there's so much interesting things about her that you can learn about today, you know, give you some so that's what I mean, like, because I've been to many events, and it almost becomes a therapy session. Everybody's like saying what's wrong, and oh, they're doing this to us. You got to figure out your solutions, and even if it's as small as like posting something or letting people know this is a real hero, and it doesn't have to be about building egos, but it could even be about this book. You know, let's get this book
Louis Michel.
go
That book
viral or
is-
something.
That book remains an inspiration book for me. You know, Louis Michel, for those of you who do not know that man, he opened a bookstore when people, again, were saying black people didn't read. And the fact that it is in the form of a children's book, you know, I work with pre-service teachers, people who say that they want to teach children. And one of the things I emphasize to them, and I'm going to emphasize this audience, and I know that you all know, just because it's packaged that way, this is for you. This is for you. I fell in love with children's literature as my research area because these were books I never had, and I learned so much. I didn't know about Louis Michel. Like, he owned the most famous black bookstore. He had more black books than, where is that archive? Do we know what happened to all those books?
I don't know. I know his son is still alive, and I know but this goes back to what I was saying earlier. There were videos of Louis Michel, and they had to go to Sweden to get it. And this guy was with Malcolm X and really about pro-black, and that's what I mean. The actual imagery of him was overseas in Sweden, in Scandinavia. And that's what I mean. Things get lost, and then it's controlled by someone. You have to probably pay someone. Oh, I own the copyright to Lewis's speech he gave on CBS whatever they have.
Yeah.
And you're paying someone else for, like that. Someone told me this a long time ago, and it made me think. A lot of times, your own culture is sold back to you. You invented something, you
Especially
have it,
ours.
and it's sold back
Yeah,
to you. And then you think, oh, this is new. It's not. It's being sold back to you.
Another challenge that I wanted to bring up is this AI thing right now. We were just talking about it before we started. But I was looking online, and I've been seeing a lot of images that are created by AI, and I think that a lot of self-published authors are using AI to illustrate their books. And they've, you know, it's cheap, it's easy, but you look at it and it's just missing the heart. It just feels canned. I mean, it's very slick, you know, and pretty at first glance, but then when you look at it, it feels very shallow, you know, because I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I feel like AI is going to get better. Like right now you can look at something and you can tell, oh, it just doesn't look right. The faces are kind of smushed in the background and people don't have, their hands look weird. But I mean, as time goes on, they're going to get better at that, and then I don't know what's going to happen to illustrators. But I mean, if people really appreciate like what we do, like we're not just hands, we're brains, right? We're using our brains, we're researching, we're doing, we're trying to be creative, and not just spitting out a product.
No, that's real. And then too, when we talk about black art, like becoming a black artist, like there has to be an added challenge. That would be a whole nother thing, right? That would be a whole nother panel. But how do we help our black children to see themselves as creators, right? And so yeah, that is an added challenge and an added piece that we need to think about. So I want to close with, you both are very prolific in terms of what you turned out. Like I looked like 72 books, and then you just from Hidden Figures, from that point in time until now.
I don't know. I've never counted. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
you've
40,
got
50, something.
40 or 50, and
Yeah.
and it's beautiful work. And I want to know who or what have you not created that you'd like to?
Oh, wow. That's a hard question. I don't know.
Well, that's what we have to do,
Yeah.
vision, right?
Wow.
I know, like, I've always found it interesting about the Pullman Porters,
Yes.
of all those different people that ended up, they were doing that work, but they ended up being, Thurgood Marshall and all these different. I just
My dad did that.
really
Yeah.
okay. I do want to do one book. Like I want to
Do
do
it. Do
but
it.
but here's I'm trying to figure out a book that I want to help people kind of come together. There's so much division,
Yeah.
and I just want to do a book like something that's almost like metaphorical, but it has a message underlying that adults could pick up.
Okay.
And I would like to do it on colorism, on even mindset of political parties. I just want to this team mentality and just people being divided. It's really it's not good for art. Like I look at the world as an artist, and when people start even close friends tell me, how to say something, and I just don't like it. It's like we have to have conversations, but a long time ago, I was talking about something, and a friend made me think and shut me up by saying, by whose standard? If you say, the world should be like this, by whose standard? And it starts to make you think outside of yourself, is what's good for me, good for everyone? And so I've been very empathetic, and I want to help all children. And I also know that the way the world is and the dynamics, even with the expected deportation, I think that the next phase of children's books is going to go towards people from South America and Latin America, Latinos, because they're going to have the same issues that people of color, like black people do. Like, why am I learning about George Washington? I don't look like him. They're not even going to, people from South America are gonna want to know about who are their heroes. And just like everything else, they're going to follow the money. If there's more of a population of people from Latin culture, all of a sudden a black book is going to be a rare thing. So I think it's important to really like keep fighting for your image.
Yeah.
And also, I don't put my trust in any publisher. Like, I try to be entrepreneurial. If I have to end up self-publishing books, I'll do it. Or I have to buy the rights back to my books if they get they basically call them they don't, you earn out to make a royalty, but then they go into remainders when they decide not to publish it anymore. And so what you end up doing is you can buy your book back from the company for $2, And that's how you have all these discount books, because they'll do like the Jackie Robinson book I did. It's about his military career. I looked online. It's so they just took that book and put it on a website, even Freedom in Congo Square.
Yeah.
And you can get these, like the publishers, like I said, if you're not
The
aware,
book won so many awards, and it's
doesn't
like,
matter.
oh.
They
I
don't.
think they'd
if-
be making money off of that. Why would they do that? You know?
if they wanted any of our books to do well, they'd put full page ads on in
Yeah.
Essence or something.
Brian Collier talked about that. He talked about the marketing or the lack
There
of
is no market.
marketing
You have
for
to
black
take
book-
your
black
your
children's
royalty
books.
and try to think about, like I said, find a solution. You know, if they won't do it, you put an ad yourself. Go to get Atlanta Parent. I looked at their pricing and put your book cover and say, actual author here in Atlanta will sign books. Just go to the website. Do what you can do to solve, because the mentality of waiting for a company to care about you is like,
Oh,
that ain't happening.
yeah.
I don't think it will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thank you, Greg.
For me, I think I've done a lot of biographies, and I really enjoy doing biographies, and I love it. But because I don't get a chance so often to do books that aren't biographies, because once you've done one, you're offered a lot of the same kind of thing, you know. So I recently did a book. It was a Cinderella story,
Okay.
but it was based on an African American slave girl who was the Cinderella character, and how, you know, and it was just so wonderful getting to do a turn of fairy tale that and like relate it to reality, you know, and how this little girl had this fairy tale in her mind, and how she saw herself as Cinderella, and how she overcame. And I'm not going to give away the story, but
What's the title?
but it's called Cece in the Underground, an Underground Cinderella Story. It's not out yet,
Okay.
but when I read that manuscript, I got chills. I was like, you know, it's not a real person, but there are so many people that it was real, you know, even though it wasn't, you know, one particular real person. And I enjoy doing that kind of thing. I'd like to do more of that too.
Wow. Well, thank you, Miss Laura Freeman. Thank you, R. Gregory Christie. This is my passion. I think this is the future. Black children's literature in particular needs many champions. So I hope that having this conversation helped everyone in this audience to see the extended value of this. I know you both have some copies of your book and your work out in the Writers Lounge, so I want to invite everybody to do that. And yes, we can take some questions, just a few.
Sure. Thank you. I've really enjoyed the conversation. My name is Tamika Hobbs. I'm the manager of the African American Research Library and Cultural Center in Fort Lauderdale. This is really close to my heart. One of our longest running programs is the Ashley Bryant Art Series. He charged us with and gifting us some art when we opened 22 years ago. He wanted us to celebrate illustrators of color. And so nearly every year since then, we've invited a Coretta Scott King award-winning illustrator to come and present to an auditorium full of kids. And those artists also donate pieces of their art. So we have this really wonderful collection of art. I don't know if you've been down, Mr. Christie. I feel like you're
No, I'm ready. Come on.
Yeah, wait a minute. Both of
If
you.
you haven't, this is your standing invitation
Oh, I
to
love
consider
it. Thank
coming down for us. We just finished with Johnny Christmas and his book Swim Team.
Okay.
It was amazing to see 203 third graders, all their hands in the air, just asking questions. And that's really my question for you is when you talk to young audiences like that, imagine this room full of third graders, how do you talk about your work to them? What messages do you try to imbue to them when you speak?
Well, I opened up an actual store for some time, and when I work with younger people, I know to keep them involved, and also to limit the, like for instance, it is like a metaphor. When I teach an older person how to paint, I can put all the paints out, If I teach a younger person how to paint, they're more enamored with the mixing of colors, like the science of mixing color. And instead of mixing just like, let's say yellow and blue or something like that, they will stir it like grits. Everything gets stirred and it all turns brown. So I've learned to when I'm teaching them, to say, what color do you want? I want red. Do you want red or blue? And they go red. And I let them paint a little bit. And when it's getting low, I say, what color do you want? Yellow or blue? Oh, I want blue. Keeping them engaged is very important. Just like even public speaking, a lot of people don't want to just hear someone speak they want to be inspired, but also sometimes it's interactive. So when I speak to young people, I don't switch. They always tell me, you don't switch it. You talk to kindergarten and college kids the same way. It might be different vocabularies, but the idea is more so I want them to be inspired, and I want to know what they are. Like the question comes up, I don't know what to draw, and I say, what do you like? Ice cream, cars, riding your bike. Like, paint what you know, draw what you know, write about what you know. So that's all. Everything is the same lesson, but it's told in a way that is something that can be comprehended by the age and skill level.
For me, when I'm talking to young kids, I would speak the same way to adults also, but it's more about the process and telling them about how I go about from start to finish working on a project, and showing them images of, like, it's really important to have the images up behind me and not just stand there and be a talking head, because they need to see. It's all, the illustration's all about the pictures, and I show them an image of the manuscript, and then I switch to a slide with an image of the sketches and the pictures, and I ask them, which would you rather read? What's important to you? And it's always the pictures that draw people into the story. It drew me into reading when I was a kid. Kids are attracted to the pictures, and then they start reading the story, and then they get excited about the story. So, and also to show them that it wasn't a just easy thing for me to get started, that it took a lot of persistence, and this is something that I really wanted to do. And it was kind of a struggle, but if you really want to do something, you can do it, and to show them that just because you don't think you're good at drawing, if you really enjoy it and you love it, you're going to get better. You just have to keep doing it. And as with anything else, it's not the first time. When you get on the bike the first time, you don't just, you can't magically ride. It's the same thing. It takes time and persistence, and persistence is really important. So.
Hello, my name is Jasmine. I work right here at Georgia State, so I'm very happy to be so close to hear you all. And I have two little ones, and the pictures are where we start with the pictures before we even get to the words. But I'm very interested if you could talk about your decision process for choosing a project. So what makes you want to choose a project versus how do you decide if a project is not for you?
Well, I come across a lot of manuscripts, and sometimes it's just that the quality of the writing is just not there. I don't feel, I'm not attracted to it, and it's a gut feeling, It's like I read something, and like I mentioned with the Cinderella story, I read that and it was like, oh my God, I want to do this. It's like, sometimes a book will. They'll offer a lot of money for that project, and sometimes not very much money. And, if I take a few projects that pay well, then I can afford to take those wonderful projects that don't pay well just because they just grab me, But lots of times I'll start on a manuscript, I'll read a manuscript, and I'll just know that I have to research, who is this person? How come I never heard of them? And that attracts me, the more research I do. And sometimes it's just the writing, and it's just a gut feeling with me. Yeah.
I've always decided, like early on in my career, I was going to do books about history or culture. And that's a broad, definition, but the emotional feeling of it is I want books that I wish I had when I was young, because I didn't have them. And even the ones I had, that's it. Just just that. It's history or culture or a book I wish I had when I was young for both of those titles.
Great. Well, we are out of time, but I want to invite you to come forward to ask your question. Thank you all again for taking the time out of your day to speak with these esteemed illustrators, and I just want to encourage you to, peruse their work in the Writers Lounge so that you can see it up close. And if you have a question that didn't get asked, I think we have a little bit of time for them to come up here. Okay, thank you so much.